Risk management expert Kovni Mudli is the 2024 Risk Manager of the Year. The women empowerment activist is also the founder of Boss Babes South Africa, which, if I've read all of this correctly, aims to uplift women in Mzansi. Kovni says the prestigious award was not only for her, but also a tribute to her fellow risk professionals. That really is a nice tribute. So my question, as we have a brief conversation, is what makes her tick, and why did she choose the risk sector, and maybe what advice to aspiring young risk professionals? Kovni, first of all, congratulations and a very warm welcome. So let's wade in with the obvious question then. What inspired you to pursue a career in risk management? Did you fall into it, or was it something that you'd planned?
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm really excited to have this discussion with you today, and I hope that it inspires those that listen to it. So for me, I started my, official career when I qualified as a chartered accountant in 2010. I was fortunate enough to do my articles at Deloitte, and I knew that once I qualified as a CASA, I really wanted to do more diverse type of roles. So for me, your typical financial manager was not my first choice. I had an affinity towards risk management, towards audit, towards strategy. And I think it's really based on my personality of always wanting to find solutions. I love thinking outside of the box, and I love coming up with actions to really mitigate risks and prevent issues in the future. So that's really how it started. After I completed my articles with Deloitte, I then went on to Accenture South Africa, which is management consulting. And during that time, I, worked for many JSE listed companies, again, focusing on identifying risks within their processes, how to optimize their processes, how to bring in best practice to help them align with what is needed to make organizations the best version of themselves. And thereafter, I started my role with Discovery Health, and for 5 years, I was the head of risk management for Discovery Health, and it was something that I truly loved, simply because, risk management, I liken it to life management, because whether you know it or not, every single day, each of us are managing risk in our own way. And I think it's very important, that once you grasp the concept of risk management, it almost becomes part and parcel of your life. And, you're trying to take you're trying to take decisions in your life that help you, not to get yourself into any kind of future, trouble or issues.
You use the phrase, the concept of risk management, and you also talk about your strength being in finding solutions. So how then would you describe your approach to identifying and mitigating risk?
I think we operate in a very dynamic environment, especially in the South African context. Things are constantly changing. So for me, it has been about, constantly keeping my finger on the pulse to be able to identify if I read something in a news article, if I read something in an IRMSA guideline or on the website, as a risk professional, you need to be thinking outside of the box in terms of what does that mean from a risk perspective? What does a macroeconomic condition mean for my particular organization? So for me, my ability to identify risk is really to take into account risks from all sources. I don't believe that any risk that comes our way is to be ignored, because sometimes a risk that looks really small could actually be a symptom of something a lot greater. And risk management is very much about doing deep dives. It is about being able to, deep dive very much like an investigative journalist does, to get down to why has something actually happened? What is the root cause of that particular risk? Some of the methodologies that we use is something called the 5 why analysis, and that helps a risk professional to drive down into why has something actually happened? Because like I say, risks are often a symptom of something greater that is happening within an organizational space.
That's so interesting, because on the one hand, you've got to have the ability to find the insight, But what I'm also hearing you say is that the interpretive analysis of that intelligence is as critical. So it's two sides in many ways to the coin.
Absolutely, absolutely. To be able to take large amounts of information, trend it, analyze it, and determine what does this actually mean, for me is the core of good risk management.
So if you were to look at the current working environment for risk professionals in this country right now, what are some of the bigger risks that they're not only facing in 2024, but let's also face forward if we can? What about next year?
Yeah, I think that's a very great question. And I want to just share a bit of insights around risk professionals know that we compile a risk register, also known as a risk profile. It is probably one of the biggest documents that highlights all the risks within a particular organization. But what I wanted to share today is probably some of the risks that I want to say are more hidden or not really, I want to say, brought out to the forefront. And for me, these are risks like cyber risk, right? Because a lot of organizations at this point are faced with cyber risk. It doesn't necessarily mean that something has to happen. It's more the risk about, do you have the right controls and processes in place to avoid these cyber risks from happening? And cyber risks, of course, as you know, lead to something a lot more serious, which is a POPIA breach. So the personal protection of information is really critical in South Africa today and the worldwide. So something like having a POPIA breach is something that could, easily get to a very high level of reputational damage. Jeremy, I actually came across a case recently where one of my mentees in Cape Town, his information was actually used by his company. So it was actually medical information that the company had gotten, and they had actually used that information against him. And that has had severe and terrible repercussions for that particular company. So I think it just goes to show that there's a lot of risks that may not be seen as very significant on your risk register or your risk profile, but looking beyond and just also using real life examples is very, very important. A second one that I think is very topical at this point is gender-based violence. We often think of gender-based violence as something that, has to happen within a romantic relationship or has to be, something physical or an assault that you can see. But as a mentor and someone that sits on various women empowerment forums, including my own, it seems to be that within corporate organizations, there seems to be a lot of GBV happening, especially from a psychological perspective, around bullying, harassment, even sexual harassment is what I've come across of late. And these are huge risks. These are risks that may not be on your risk profile, but when they go wrong in a very, I want to say, mammoth way. So I think it's very important to make sure that you've got the right governance controls, you've got the right structures to make sure that these kind of behaviors, often that leaders are perpetrating, are well managed, that they're identified, that there's awareness, and that everyone is contributing towards this solution. Because I think that is a really big thing at this point. I hear it from my mentees. I hear it from people that I speak to. These are, challenges that if they, I want to say, go viral, we're living in a world these days of cancel culture. Everyone can record anything these days. And I think that is very, very important to make sure that, where you've got these gaps in your processes, they're causing these kind of governance issues, is causing these kind of breaches in labor law, that you do have processes and controls to actually mitigate it before it has the ability to cause significant reputational damage.
You're absolutely right. And conversely to your argument, I would also suggest to you that risk management is not the remit of just one person or one department. It is, as we've learned so many times before, a company-wide discipline. Courtney, you talk about real life, and I want to ask you if you're able to share an example of a significant risk within your professional environment that you've successfully managed.
I think my environment, I want to say, in my life has been a little bit less exciting than some of my mentees and some of the people that I engage with regularly. But I think one that is quite topical, being professionals in risk management and also as being a CA and having a code of conduct to comply with, and a responsibility to make sure that we are, reporting on risks accurately, completely, transparently. I came across another incident recently in KZN where an individual was being asked by her direct leader to, change certain information, to remove risks off a risk register. Basically, if I could summarize it, this person was being asked to do things that were irregular and unethical. And of course, the person also being a CA stood up for herself and decided that this was something that she was not going to tolerate. And as a result of that, there were, I want to say, a lot of attacks. There were a lot of bullying tactics that were levied against her. And I think this for me is a really huge concern when we look at professionals. Because at the end of the day, as much as you are aligned to a particular employer, it is very important for us as professionals in general to make sure that we are able to abide by ethical considerations, that we are doing things that are regular, that we are following the SAICA Code of Conduct, the IRMSA Code of Conduct, that we are following all of these rules and regulations to the T. And I don't think anyone in any professional situation should be finding themselves in a situation where they've got to choose between their job and they've got to choose between doing what is right.
Which I guess begs the question, how do you foster or inculcate an environment or culture of risk management within an organization, and often when so many corners, as you've just outlined to me, are being cut?
Yeah. For me, Jeremy, a lot of it starts, and most of it starts in any organization, is what we call the tone at the top. And this is your most senior leadership. It is the values that they exhibit. It is the disciplinary actions that they take when they see that something is not right within their organization. For me, everything starts when we talk about the tone at the top. Your ethics, your values, your leadership, everything starts at the top. And if that is strong, and if that foundation is strong, then you notice that your leading companies and your best practice companies, that kind of leadership filters through right to the bottom. So you have a top-down approach that's great and ethical, and you have a bottom-up approach that's also ethical. And that's what you find in your leading companies, where the two marry each other, and you never find a situation where there's misalignment between, for example, an employee's own personal value systems and that of an organization. I think a lot of it, you may have heard the term that a fish rots from the head. And that is certainly what I've seen from my experience. It is very important to make sure that when you're choosing a job or you're getting into a particular environment, that you're making sure that your values are aligning with that of that particular company. Because I think that is very, very important when we talk about how do we define a risk culture, how do we build these healthy cultures within an organization that foster transparent risk reporting. Because if you are in a transparent, or if you're in a healthy risk environment, you're able to report on issues. You're not able to do that with fear. Your optimized risk models talk about being able to report anything without having an element of fear of failure, fear of being fired, fear of being, victimized or harassed because you've raised or spoken up about something. And I think that is something that all organizations need to be aspiring towards, to have that open door policy and to be able to deal with issues when they are brought to you, because I don't think anyone in any organization is going to make up these kind of things. So often when things are reported, it's coming from a place where someone has experienced that, and now they're, raising it with your leadership, and they're expecting some kind of action, remediative action to be done.
Just a final question as we come to the end of this conversation. No organization, and for that matter, the industry itself wants rotten fish. In fact, what they need are young, enthusiastic, and fit fish. So, to extend your metaphor then, is there any specific advice you would give to someone who is aspiring to become a risk professional? How would you guide them? And again, given Kovni, your deep appreciation of mentorship.
Yes. I think that's also a very great question. And I just want to say that the profession of risk management, and I say this with the utmost respect, it is not for everyone. There are some people that generally do not love having debates with other people. There are some people that don't enjoy driving down all the way to identify what is the actual root cause. Why has something actually happened? And I think for me, you're going to have a very curious mind. That's the first thing. An element of having a curious mind is the first step to thinking that, risk management could be something that you could align well with. I think all the jobs that we take or that we, find ourselves in, or the environments that we find ourselves in, need to also align with us from a personal perspective, from a purpose perspective. So for me, curiosity is one, and then resilience is another. I think as risk managers, we often, don't want to take the first answer that is given to us, because a surface level answer is often, like I said, a symptom of something a lot greater, and often there's inherent risk within organizations that you're going to have to dig deep and identify. I think as well, what's very important as a risk professional is a level of bravery, to be able to stand up for what you believe in, to be able to use your skills, your knowledge, your qualifications as a risk professional, and to be able to guide stakeholders towards making the right decision. And I think a lot of people don't really love where they've got to, compromise and come together and walk people on a journey. So I think for me, it is about having a personality that is resilient. Personally, I am a truth seeker. I don't hide from that. So for me, it is really about getting to the truth and being able to report on whatever it is I need to report on accurately, transparently, and complete. The minute I don't have that freedom to make sure that I'm reporting on everything that I need to, that's when a sense of discomfort can come over me. So I think for me, it is very important for risk professionals who are thinking about entering the space is to just spend time understanding a bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you enjoy? Do you enjoy those debates that go on for hours sometimes? Is this something that you really want to put your heart and soul into? Because I think that is the makings of a good risk manager. And I think I'm surrounded by a lot of great risk professionals through the various forums that I sit in as well, and the offline chats that we have with our colleagues and our friends. It really is about being able to say, I am going to put my head on the block because this is something that I believe in. This is something that has to be reported. This is something that cannot be ignored. And for me, that is really the makings of making sure that we are reporting on things, because at the end of the day, it is public interest. We are not reporting on it for ourselves. We are not even reporting on it directly for our companies. But there are stakeholders that are actually reliant on the information that we as risk professionals put out there. Stakeholders make decisions on what we put out there. So it is very important that what we present to them is fair, accurate, and transparent.
Well, you have made a very eloquent case for a career in risk management, and I'm going to congratulate you on your accolade. Kovni Mudli is the Institute of Risk Management 2024 Risk Manager of the Year. It is an award which is richly deserved. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to lend my voice to this platform and hopefully inspire the young risk professionals to also, decide if this is something that they want to invest their time and follow a career in risk management.
And we're done.
Thank you.
Don't go just yet. Rox, have you got all of that?
That was stunning. Thank you both.
We can see your picture
so much. I've stopped the recording.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that, Kavini. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Can I make 2 points?
Yes.
First of all, it was really brilliant. Rox,
Brilliant.
this is a, we're always looking for new voices in the risk management industry, the media generally. There are a few, and we tend to use them a lot. So next time I've got an issue where we need to talk about risk, I'm going to come knocking on your door, right?
Sounds great.
So he's saying this won't be the last time.
This sounds great, yeah. No, this is great. And I think, because risk is constantly changing. The environment that we operate in is so dynamic. We've got NHI coming up. We've got a host of other things that are, popping up in the next, I want to say year to 5 years is what we call emerging risks. So I think it's very important, to keep that conversation going and to bring new thought leadership to risk management, because I think people look at the risk register and that everyone knows what's on there, but I guess it's also important for me to identify what's not on there.
You've got
what's not on there and what could be on there if